Hi students, it's Dr. Menchaka Banulo, and I'm going to talk to you briefly about your readings for the week. First of all, I hope you had an amazing break, and I hope that you were back safely. This break was, for me, too fast, and I'm sure it feels the same for you. So, we're going to do Malcolm X and MLK. I'm sure that some of you have already done something like this in a class at some point in your lives. But what I'm hoping is that you have the tools, both because you've studied more and matured more, and also because of the topics that we've been working on, to take a fresh look at what we're dealing with in these texts. And there's a couple of points I want to hit sort of fast just to help you interpret. The first thing I want to say is that I think there's a really good quotation that Malcolm X has, and I'm just going to paraphrase it. He says, "We," meaning African Americans, "we should be grateful for the progress in civil rights." That's a question, right? So that's like being grateful to the man who stabbed you in the back when he removes the knife, but only by leaving a couple of inches still inside your back. And that's kind of a butchering of the quote, but I think it communicates something important. Which is that it's very easy to read any text on racial politics and to say this is a thing of the past, or to say that this is identity politics and a preoccupation, and you're free to think those things. But what I want to encourage everyone who's reading to do is to look at the text as if they're speaking to you now. Look at them and try to understand not just the situation of the time, but the context of our own society now. And I'd point out that MLK and Malcolm X are not that far removed from us in terms of decades. I mean, you're young and I'm old, and so I feel time differently than you. But I can say that in terms of how generations learn and grow, we're barely separated from them. The second point I wanted to make is that Malcolm X, I think, is clearly read as a radical, and when you read him, you're going to see why. But I think that people underestimate the extent to which MLK is a radical as well. I mean, I like to joke with my students whenever we read a letter from a Birmingham jail that they read this letter and they think that he's like, it won't work on camera, but I say they think he's doing the Care Bear stare. I don't know how many of you know who the Care Bears are, but the Care Bears, the way that they would defeat people is they'd stick out their tummies, which had little special signs of love on them. And they defeat their enemy through just love, okay? And I think that we kind of have this sanitized version of King, where we think that's what he's doing. That's not the whole picture. Read really closely. What he says is extremely challenging. Pay attention to the claim he makes that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That's not a small claim. That's a huge claim. That means that anywhere injustice is happening, that the way that the human community works, we are responsible for it. Okay? Another radical claim he makes is that the moderate is in a way worse when it comes to these issues than the open racist, because the moderate is an enabler for him. Another way that he is really radical is about nonviolence. He points out that what is happening for the African Americans in the South and in Birmingham is not just that they're being denied political and civil rights, which is of course awful, but that they're dying, their churches are getting blown up. When something bad happens to one of them, like they're abused or a family member is killed, they can't turn to the courts. And so he's talking about extreme violence being countered not by violence, but by peaceful resistance. And I want you to pay attention to the means of peaceful resistance he talks about, especially because he really kind of goes for the jugular. And again, this is related to an earlier point. People think of him as kind of the sanitary character. But, I mean, he was trying to destroy the economy of Birmingham because he thought if he could affect people's money, he would make them take notice. And he was right. So he was aiming for their livelihoods. I think that's something that is also under-examined about him. And so, you know, everyone does the normal contrast between MLK and Malcolm X, but I want you to take a closer look. Okay, I'll see you next week.